noise.
Welcome back to the next part of this Truth and Rhythm episode. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. Also become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkandstuff.net. Thank you so much for your interest and support. Enjoy.
When I came back from New York, I hooked up with Prince, and Prince says to me, because he had an apartment, and he didn't have no apartment before because he was living with Andre's family, and I loved Andre's mom, man. His whole family is good. I love Bernadette, man. She reminded me so much of Brooklyn people, rather than Minneapolis people. But Prince had said to me when I came back, he says, yeah, I want you to meet, some people. And I says, really? He says, yeah. He said, they got me this apartment. I said, no kidding. It was Owen Husney and Chris Moon had the studio, Moon Sound. And I said, okay, cool. So I met Owen, I met Chris Moon, but, I didn't know what they was going to do. This is before even the demo. So we're in Sound 8. Prince comes out. He wants to play with us. And we said, okay. We do the session. And it was awesome. It was great. Hank goes back to New York. And about a month later, he gets fired. And I go like, what? Oh, man. But now we're stuck. We're signed with Polydor. Hank is fired. What am I going to do? And the new people that came in didn't see eye to eye, of course. They bring in a whole new team. And Hank got fired, so the other team let us go. So we got dropped from Polydor. So when Prince was in the studio, he was doing his demo when he saw us. And me, Andre, and Prince was just outside just talking. And I just told him, I said, man, we got dropped from Polydor, man. Prince was more upset than I was. I mean, he was like, what? He said, what? He said, I don't believe. He says, man, we got to go back in the studio. He looked at Andre and said, we got to go back in the studio with Pepe. Andre said, yeah, okay, cool. And Prince looked at me and I said, all right, cool. I'm thinking, where am I going to get the money to pay some studio, $100 an hour, but I booked it anyway. I said, I'll find it. I don't know where I'm going to get it from, but I'll find it. Booked the studio. We went back in the studio. Prince and I wrote Just Another Sucker. And then me and another friend of mine wrote Loving Cup. And then I wrote Dance to the Music of the World. So Andre, me, and Prince was in the studio. Prince played drums and guitar on all of it, and Andre played bass. And Prince played keyboards on Loving Cup, And we just had a relationship, Prince and I, and Andre, and even Morris, man, we had a relationship that was tight. I mean, and you know somebody at that age and growing up and stuff, and you're showing them the business and stuff, and they see it actually happening. It wasn't like a lot of words and stuff. We were actually doing it. We were in the studio. Pepe went to New York and got signed by a label and stuff, and then he met up with Owen and Chris Moon. Then Prince gets signed. Prince gets signed to Warner Brothers. And I'm saying to my group, I says, look, I'm going to concentrate and support Prince. because I don't want what happened to us happen to him. Of course, I was ready to, take the songs that Prince and I did, and we didn't even get a chance to really finish them because Prince got signed and stuff, to look for another label and stuff. I thought it would be good because I'm coming from a major label looking for a deal. So I know that I would get in the door. Yeah, we were signed with Polydor, boom, 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 boom. Then I just dropped all of that and started concentrating on working with Prince. And then Prince got signed and he started auditioning his band members. And he was at Dale's Tire Mart. I loaned him 2 giant speakers that I had Eden Super Serpents. I mean, they were huge, and so I loaned him those speakers so he can rehearse and audition his musicians coming in. And one day, I don't know if Prince left the door unlocked or somebody actually broke in, but he got robbed. They took all the equipment except for those 2 speakers because they were too huge, So you would have to have a truck, to get, a truck to get them in there. And so I was totally upset. And I looked at Prince and I said, Prince, okay, look. I said, you guys are going to come to my house and you're going to rehearse there, practice there, because ain't nobody breaking into my crib. I just pulled a Brooklyn thing. I said, ain't nobody coming in my crib, man. He says, okay. So they came over to my house and they started ordering equipment from New Capet in Minneapolis, and everything was coming to my house. And they started rehearsing there 12 hours a day, 10 in the morning, 10 at night, and I had to kick them out, man, so I could get some peace and quiet. But, and it was just nonstop. He auditioned Gail Chapman as a keyboard player. Prince's cousin Charles had brought her in to audition, and she got the gig. And Dez came in, and he got the gig. And of course, Bobby Z got the drummer gig because he knew Owen. And Bobby started running errands for Prince before, even thinking about playing for him and stuff like that, And so Prince had, he had Andre, because him and Andre were like this. And, and so Andre, Gail, Bobby Z, and Prince, and Matt Fink, I think Matt was like 19 or 20 or something like that, and and they rehearsed at my house, and it was just amazing. I mean, I loved it. The neighbors never complained, and it was just awesome. And one day they rehearsed, and Prince had got a house on France Avenue, and I had to tell him something. I couldn't get him on the phone. I was going like, man, and so I drive over there, ring the doorbell. I couldn't get an answer, but I saw his car outside, so I said, I know that he's in there, so then I started hearing these little tapping. I'm going like, where's that coming from? And I went around the side of the house and I peeped down the basement window. Prince was down in the basement playing drums. This is after 12 hours of practice. He was playing. So I had to knock on the window in between the beats so that he would hear it, because I couldn't do it with the beat. So I had, if he's going to pop, pop, going da 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 da, he's going like. Then he looks up. I said, "Man, open the door." And I told him whatever it was. I had to tell him. I think, what was it? I can't even remember what I told him and stuff. But and I was amazed. That's when I really started finding about the genius in him, of how hard he worked, and, just how he was. And even when he had to go to LA, so he asked me, hey, man, watch my crib. You can stay in my house and stuff. I said, yeah, no problem. So he had this Korg drum machine there, and keyboards and stuff. So I started writing songs, man. I put up the drum machine, boom, 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 and I started playing guitar and stuff and playing. So I wrote 2 songs, You Can Be My Teacher and Love, Love, Love. And Prince comes in from LA, and I said, man, check this out, man. And he hears it and he goes, wow, picks up the bass, boom, boom, and starts playing. I'm going like, wow, he added to the song. So we have it out. It's out now. It's on one of our albums. And he was just non-stop. He was non-stop. I mean, and Prince and I'm telling you, we were tight, man. Whatever I asked him to do, he did. He didn't say, why? Why I got to do this for? He just said, okay. And he did it. I mean, this guy was like a sponge, soaking in everything that he could, And matter of fact, there was this girl. She was in the movie Purple Rain, and she was the one. Her name is Kim, and she the one in the film who brought Morris his drinks, and he had told her,
Jill Jones.
No, not Jill. Kim Upshur.
Okay.
Kim Upshur. And Morris would say, yeah, keep the change. And then he would tell Jerome, go get my change. So Kim was dating Prince. And Prince gave her a diamond ring. I don't know how much it cost, 10, 20 grand or something. And she was so happy. And Kim and I were great friends. I mean, just good friends. We would talk all the time. And so her and Prince had an argument one day. So she comes over to my house. And she goes like, Prince and I had this argument. I'm not going to call him. He'll call me. I know he'll call me. And I told her, I said, baby, he ain't going to call you. I said, just when he thinks, oh man, I better call Kim, he's going to get a call from Warner Brothers or his manager or one of the other musicians, and his music comes first. And he never called her. He never called her back, man, because Prince was all about music. That was his thing, man. And I'm going to tell you one thing. He was not going to fail no matter what. And this is why he practiced so hard, man. All that time, all that practice, he was not going to fail. He had it in his brain. I'm not failing. I'm going to do everything I can to make this happen. And that's exactly what he did. He wasn't failing, man. And I appreciate that from him. And then I tried, Scott. I tried. I remember one day I was going like, okay, man, Princess, man, this guy is good, man. I said, I'm going to take my guitar and I'm going to practice just as hard as Prince did. I'm going to practice 10 hours a day. I'm going to get on my guitar. I got on my guitar and I started practicing. I got to like around 4 hours and I was saying, I can't do it. I can't do it, man. I didn't have it in me. I could practice for 4 hours. That was good. And that was a stretch, man, so 4 hours. 10 hours? No, I could not do it. It just wasn't going to happen, So that's how it was. So the Revolution, after Prince got his band together and stuff, they had to learn all his songs from his first album. And the For You album, they had to learn all of it. And so they practice and practice and practice. So just then, Prince thinks he's ready. He says, I'm ready. I'm ready to go out on tour, and he had like a $80,000 tour budget from Warner Brothers. He's ready to go. And I said, okay, so let's do a show, showcase. So I produced this show at the Capri Theater in Minneapolis. So we had Marcy and Chrissy. They did the tickets. We did security. I went and got lighting from Naked Zoo, everything. We talked with the owner. What was his name? Ira. I don't know if I forget his last name, Ira. And he said, sure. And so we made the tickets. I think it was like $3.75, prints. We still have some of them tickets. We're going to put them on NFT. But at any event, Warner Brothers was coming in to see him perform. So it was cold. It was in the winter. I think it was around in January. I can't remember, January, I think. And so we ready to do the show. So Warner Brothers comes in. I ushered these guys. They had the limos. It was cold. They left the engines running in the limo. And I ushered them to their seats and, where they had to go. And Prince kicked it off. Ladies and gentlemen, Prince, boom, he comes out and he starts doing songs from his first album. I thought it was excellent. It was awesome. Of course I would. I'm biased anyway. And Warner Brothers, for some strange reason, thought that he wasn't ready yet to go on tour. I don't know why they said it, but it was ready to me. So at that point, Prince had got a different rehearsal spot, a bigger place, and on 7th Avenue, I believe it was, or Highway 7. And there was a rehearsal spot there that he went to, and he started rehearsing there until he got ready, to go out on tour. But during that time, what had happened, I had went over his house. I'm going to keep talking, I went over his house and he needed something. He needed some space heaters or something because it was cold in the basement or whatever. And I said to him, I go, well, where's your manager at? Isn't he supposed to be helping you doing this stuff, man, getting all your stuff together? And he says, I don't know, So I got in my car. I drove over to Owen's office. He had a company called the Ad Company. And Owen's pissed off at me behind this too. And I can understand him being pissed off because, and I'm not knocking anything that he's done great for Prince. He's done very well for Prince. He got him signed and stuff. He did other manager duties and stuff. I went with him to Chicago, drove to Chicago with him and his wife to put posters up in the hood, in these record shops and stuff like that, But I went to Owen's office that day and I says, Owen, I says, you're here at the Ad Company and your artists need some things done. I says, how come you're not doing what you should be doing? And, this is, he said to me, he says, Pepe, he says, why should I leave my job? Because I told him, I said, you should be in LA, Chicago, New York or something. He said, why should I leave my job for someone who probably won't make it? Now, I can't make this up. He'll probably deny it, but I'm telling him the truth. He got mad at me one day because I had said it in somebody's book and he wouldn't answer my calls. And then I said, Owen, what's up? What's wrong? Then he said, something that you said in the book. I said, what did I say? So he sent me the page and I read it. And I said, Owen, I said, but that's the truth. I said, it's the truth, man. I'm not going to lie and stuff, it's the truth, So I went back to Prince's house because Owen had said, after he said that, I said, look, I'm not going to see Prince get messed up out here. I'm just not going to let it happen. And he says, well, Pepe, he says, well, you manage him then. And I says, Owen, I am not a manager, but I'm not going to let him get screwed. I drive back to Prince's house. And I said, Prince, Owen is out. He says, okay. He didn't go, why? He didn't go, really? He didn't, he says, okay. That was it. Then he had to go to one of his first album signings in North Carolina. And so he told Warner Brothers, Owen's out, Pepe's in, you know. So I had to manage him. I had to manage him for like 3 months. And he wanted me to stay. And I said, Prince, I said, look, I said, I'm not a manager. You know, I know what managers do. I said, but I'm not a manager, you know. I said, I'm a record producer. And I said, and you need somebody who's been in this business and knows everybody. He says, okay. He says, I told him, I said, I know somebody. And Don Taylor was a very good friend of mine because he managed Little Anthony Imperials. He managed Diana Ross. He managed Marvin Gaye. And he managed Bob Marley and the Wailers, you know. So I called Don. He lived in Miami. I says, Don, I got a guy here. He's signed with Warner Brothers. His name is Prince, and he needs a real manager. He says, okay, Pepe, I'm going to fly you guys to Miami. So he flew Prince and I to Miami, you know, and I let them talk. I wasn't even there, you know. They were, I said, no, you guys go ahead and you'll talk. So Don explained to him, and I was there for this moment when he had said, what's your tour budget? Prince said $80,000. He says, that's not enough. Don gets on the phone, calls Mo Austin, who was the president of Warner Brothers at that time, calls him up, starts talking to Mo, hangs up the phone. He says, now you got $160,000 tour budget. I looked at Prince and I said, that's what a manager does. So he looks at me and he smiles and stuff, you know. So he winds up being signed with Don for a year. And I don't know what happened, but he was signed with Don for a year. And then the next manager he had was Perry Jones and Tony Winfrey, you know, and then Cavallo and Ruffalo. And then I was there through Owen, Don, Tony, Cavallo, Ruffalo. You know, I was there through all of those managements. And then at one point, I think the Dirty Mind album came out, and Prince was really getting popular. And I wanted to go. I wanted to leave. I said, he's safe now. You know, I started his publishing company for him so they wouldn't get ripped off. You know, matter of fact, when they was rehearsing, a letterhead came from his lawyers in L.A. As all the mail was coming to my house, all the fan mail, and I still got some fan letters. All the mail and everything was coming to my house. And so I opened up one of the envelopes, and it was BMI contract for Prince to register himself as a publisher songwriter. You know, and the bill was $900, and I went downstairs and said, Prince. He says, yeah. I said, come on up here for a second. He come upstairs, and I said, you see this? He looks at it. He goes, didn't we do this already? And I said, yeah, we did it for a price of a stamp. You know, we did it for the price of a stamp. I said, now these guys want you to do it. And look at the bill, $900. And I was teaching them. I said, this is how they rip you off, man. This is how they get, you know what I mean? Even with publishing, I said, when Warner Brothers asks you, do you have a publisher? Tell them yes, and they'll leave you alone. If you tell them no, they will say, don't worry, man, we got you. We'll publish your stuff. And I said, and that means that they're going to own your copyrights, you know.
How long did you ultimately continue, you know, helping Prince and were really part of his, you know, professional life?
From 75 to 1986. And I had to go because I figured that Prince is in good hands now. He's got good management. His career's going well. And he was getting to be a star, you know? And I started seeing, you know, just little changes in him and stuff as being a star, as most artists do. They all get into it. And I felt that one day that he's going to say something to me that I wasn't going to like. You know, I've seen all of these groups come up since I was 15, all of these bands and everything. And even my uncle, you know, from the time he had his Million Seller and then had a low point and then getting back, having more hits with Going Out of My Head and Hurt So Bad and Outside Looking In and all of those songs and stuff. You know, I started seeing little changes in them. And I just said, well, I thought it was a great time for me to go. And I blame myself for that because I feel that if I would have stayed with them, and Prince wanted me to stay, you know, and his management, see, what happened was he sent his management team after me to stay. You know, if he would have asked me himself, you know, I probably would have stayed, you know. But these are the little differences that happens with an artist. Someone that I was with so close, you know, who never questioned anything that I asked of him, you know, and now he's sending these managers to ask me to stay, you know, and you know, I didn't appreciate that. And I would have felt that if he would have asked me himself, that I would have probably stayed, you know. But, you know, I still supported him, you know, and I was still there. I went to all the concerts and stuff. I can always go backstage and see all the people and everything. And then he signed Morris Day, and then Morris came out with his first album, and then I helped Morris out. Morris was hanging out at my place in Maple Grove at my house. You know, he used to come over like almost like every day. You know, we just hang out, and smoke weed and stuff, and, you know, just hang out. One day we ran out of weed, get Morris's Mustang 5-point. Everybody got the same friend. So here we drive to Minneapolis looking for more weed. And who do we see? Prince. And we both go, oh, no. God. We didn't want to run into Prince. I mean, we love him, of course, but he didn't smoke. He didn't drink. You know, to us, he was a square, you know, even though he was a genius in music. He runs over to the car and he goes, hey, man, what are you guys doing? And we go, nothing, you know, like that. Then he says, hey, listen to this. And he gives Morris a cassette. Morris puts the cassette in the system. And it's my song, If You See Me. You know, the one that he played guitar on in 1975. You know, here it is in the 80s, man. And I went like, oh, wow, man, because I didn't recognize it at first. Morris said, man, Pepe, that's your song. And I went like, what? And I started listening. I went like, oh, wow. And I looked at Prince and I said, yeah, man, this is really cool. He says, yeah, Pep. He says, I'm going to put this out on one of my albums. And I said, all right, cool, man. That was cool, you know. So we were tight. Everything was good. And, you know, no problems. We all got the same friends. And we left and stuff, left Prince and stuff, you know. And I go back home and I tell Marcy and Christy, and I go like, yeah, Prince is going to put this out on his one of his albums and stuff. And they were going like, oh, wow, that's cool, man, you know, and everything. But he never did. He never put it out. Mm-hmm. So at this time, in 1984, 85, I want to do my own album. So the songs that Prince and me and Andre did, and when I got let go from Polydor and we went back in the studio, I started working on that album. Actually, I was going to sell the publishing. And then a friend of mine had says, no, don't sell it, man, you know. And he said, you should do your own album. So he started his own label called Hot Pink. And he says, I'll pay you like 20 grand to produce your album. And I said, all right, cool, you know. So even though I knew about production and I had produced, I was a little skeptical. So I called a good friend of mine named Tony Sylvester. Tony Sylvester was a producer and member of The Main Ingredient. You know, everybody plays a fool, you know, sometimes him and Cuban Gooding Sr. And I knew all of these guys. So I called Tony. I said, Tony, man, I got to produce my album. I want you to co-produce it with me. He says, okay. I said, I'll give you 10 grand. So I gave him half the money and stuff. So I went to New York, and we're doing my album. And Prince had put out another album, and my song wasn't on that album. And then Jesse Johnson called me up. He was a guitar player for the time, and he was doing his solo thing with A&M, and he's putting out his second album, Shockadelica. He calls me up. I'm in New York, and he goes, Pepe, man, Prince did my song, If You See Me, but he titled it Do Yourself a Favor. So it's 2 titles, If You See Me, and then / Do Yourself a Favor. So Jesse had heard Prince's version. Then he calls me up and says, Pepe, I want to put this on my album. I said, go ahead, man, do it, And so he said, okay, thanks a lot. And I said, I'll split the publishing with you, He says, okay, cool. And so Jesse recorded it. And before he recorded it or put it out, I go back to Minneapolis from New York. I see Prince in First Avenue, and this is our first argument. First and only argument. I go up to him. He said, yeah, man. He says, I heard that you were doing this album, And I said, yeah. I said, didn't your people tell you about it? Because I called Bob Cavallo, and I said, Bob, I didn't talk to Prince, man. Tell him that I'm doing an album called Minneapolis Genius with me, him, and Andre. And then Bob says to me, he says, I don't think Prince want to hear about that right now. And I'm going like, what? What are you talking about? He said, no, I don't think he's going to want to hear about this. And I went like, wow. I said, all right, hung up the phone. So now I'm at First Avenue, and Prince says, yeah, I heard you doing an album. I said, yeah. I said, I told Bob. He didn't tell you? He goes like, no. I said, well, then it's not my fault. I said, it's your people, because I called Bob up and tell you that I was doing this album. And he says, oh, okay. He said, what about Do Yourself a Favor? And I says, yeah, what about it? He said, I was going to put this on one of my albums. And he said, now you got Jesse doing it. I said, Prince, man, you told me you was going to put this out on one of your albums. I think you put out an album, 2 albums. You didn't put it on there. I said, listen, I have to eat too. And so that was the gist of the whole argument and stuff like that. So I said, yeah, and I had Jesse do it, So it was kind of like a heated discussion. So the next day, my lawyer calls me up from New York going like, hey, I heard that you and Prince had this big argument at some nightclub. I'm going like, excuse me? I said, what? I said, what do you mean? I said, how did you hear about this? It was just like overnight, And I said, no, we just had a little disagreement, man. I said, come on, And he said, all right. So a few weeks later, Bobby Z had given a party at his house. And of course I was invited and stuff. So I go there and stuff. And then Prince comes in and stuff. And I see him, he sees me, we hug and stuff like that. And so we made up. It was no big deal. It was no big deal. And that was the first and only argument, or disagreement that I had with Prince. And then it was done. It was done. I still supported him and everything like that. So we were cool. Yeah. Yeah.
I always thought it was curious that Jesse album was called Shockadelica, but
yeah.
Prince put it out as a B-side, and there was no track on his album called Shockadelica.
I know. Isn't that crazy? It's crazy. And then we did Purple Rain, and my part was cut out, of course. I did a scene with Morris Day, and we were at the club, and because they figured Morris laughs, and then my laugh, that would be funny. And this guy was on stage, and he was juggling these hatchets, and knives and stuff, and he kept dropping them, going like, oh shoot, So Morris would laugh, I would laugh, blah blah blah, and I thought this was going to be in a movie, but it was cut out, But Prince does Purple Rain, and after he sings Purple Rain, he walks back to the dressing room, and I'm one of the people standing in the hallway as he walks by and stuff. So I still got my face in there, or whatever and stuff. So at the wrap of Purple Rain, I'm sitting down, and Morris and Prince are going at it. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, you this and blah, 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 blah. I look around. I'm going like, dang, what's going on here? And then Prince tells Morris, you owe me, man. You owe me, And Morris stares at Prince and goes like, I owe you? He said, if anybody owes anybody anything, you owe Pepe. And I'm going like, what do you put my name in the thing for? You know what I mean? And Morris jets, he leaves, man. And he goes to California, Santa Monica. About a week later, he calls me up. And he says, Pepe, man, he says, you got to help me, man. And I was going like, what are you talking about? He said, Prince is trying to destroy me, man. Because they had the same accountant, the same, they was in the same camp. And I said, oh, man. I said, I couldn't see that, because, I started with these guys, and now they fighting each other. And I'm going like, oh, man. So I tell Morris on the phone, I said, okay, look, I said, don't do anything. Don't sign nothing with nobody. Don't shake hands with nobody. Don't even look at anybody making any kind of deals, and I'll be there. He says, okay. I flew to LA, and he picks me up, and we go to his house in Santa Monica. And I hear all the stories and stuff, and Prince was calling Morris up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning.
Side note, I was living in Santa Monica in 85.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was my town.
And I'm going like, what, and I'm yelling, man. I'm going like, man, give me the phone. Let me talk to Prince, man. Give me the phone. Morris was going like, no, man, no. I'll talk to him and stuff, and I was going like, oh, man. So I don't know what the world he was talking about, man, but, Prince wasn't very nice, to Morris at all. So I had to start building Morris's team. He needed a manager, he needed an accountant, and he needed a lawyer, So I start on the phone. I start looking for people and everything. I find David Braun as an attorney. I find Rennet Accounting Services. I think it was Rennet Feldman or Feldman and Rennet or whatever. And I found this other guy from Tri-State Agency. And I had to go to Warner Brothers and talk on Morris's behalf. Because here's the movie getting ready to come out. Everybody's talking about the movie. Morris don't have no money. Morris ain't got no tickets to go to the movie. Here he is, the star of the movie, or one of the stars of the movie, and everybody's trying to get a hold of Morris. All media, everybody's trying to get him. And Prince's people would say Morris is not available. He's not available. Whoever called, I don't care who it was. Oh, sorry, Morris is not available. So we found out that Prince was in Europe with his accountant, and Morris had a federal and state income tax return that went to the accountant's office. So Morris' mother had called up the accountant and said, his office, accountant's office, and said, you have to get, Morris's federal income tax and state income tax over to him, because if you don't, it's a federal offense and you're going to go to jail. You better, scare them. And so they couriered over his check, which was, I think it was like $17,000. And so we paid his rent because he was behind on his rent, got his Porsche out of the shop. And then we drove to Warner Brothers and stuff. And I sat down with Mo Austin, the president of Warner Brothers, and spoke to him, and about the contract that him and Prince had. And Morris had a 7% royalty rate that was moved up to 18%. And Mo Austin said, "Don't tell Prince." I don't know why everybody was afraid of him. I don't know. But Mo had said, "Don't tell Prince that I upped your royalty rate." He says, "Oh, okay. So now we had to find management. We got the lawyer, and I had to make sure that everybody knew each other, that everybody got along. That the lawyer got along with the accountant, and the accountant got along with the agency. Now we had to find a manager that got along with everybody, because we had to build his team. And I knew that much about the business. So we went to Sandy Gallon. Sandy Gallon, without Morris even signing anything, sent us on, I can't tell you how many interviews. We did like 80 interviews. And before that, we was at Warner Brothers, and I had called my friend, Dixie Watley, who was host of Entertainment Tonight. She was the first host before Mary Hart came on. And I called Dixie up, and I says, "How would you like to have Morris Day on your show?" And she goes, "Morris Day, everybody's trying to get him. We can't get him." I says, "Well, he's here. We got him right here." And she says, "Well, where do you want to do it at?" And we said, "Hey, we can do it right here at Warner Brothers." So Entertainment Tonight came to Warner Brothers and stuff, and Morris did his interview there. And then we got Sandy Gallon, and then Sandy sent us we did Merv Griffin, we did David Letterman, we had People Magazine follow us around, for the whole day doing the shoot. We did Rolling Stone, we did CBS News or whatever. I mean, we did it all, and we was only late one time. And when I went and I spoke with Mo Austin, he was saying that, "Yeah, well, what's going on? I heard that you guys was late to an interview." I'm saying, like, I said, "Mo," I said, "we did over 80 interviews, 80. And I said, we was late one time because Morris had to iron his shirt, just got a brand new shirt, and he want to iron all the wrinkles, folds out of his shirt and stuff. And we was only like 5 minutes late, no big deal, And he says, okay. So, everything was cool. But he hooked it up for us to have tickets to the premiere. He gave us money and hooked us up with limos and bodyguards and all the things that we needed. Because he said, you should be at the premiere of that movie. You should be there. And so we went, we got our clothes made and stuff, and we got our limos and stuff. We had the Excalibur limo, then we had the other white limo behind us. And then we had two bodyguards, one with his mom, and then one with us in the car and stuff. And then when we rolled up on the premiere, it was off because the lines were around the corner. Scott, it was just like the time when at the Brooklyn Fox Theater, where the kids had the lines all the way around the corner. They was out there since 4 a.m. or whatever. This is how the lines were. And I hadn't seen lines like that since, We go to the premiere and the lines were around the corner. We were like, oh man. Morris gets up, sticks his head out of the sunroof, and he goes like, and everybody, the place went crazy. People were screaming, just going nuts and stuff. And we go inside, we see Prince, and he looks at us and stuff, and I don't know what their beef was and stuff or whatever. And so we go inside, we get our seats after Morris gets interviewed by MTV. And we sit down. And every time Prince's picture came up on the screen, there was a section of women and they would scream, ah! We looked at each other and go like, he paid them, It was so funny, man. So we see the movie, everything was great. We go to the after party and stuff. And then after the after party, we go to Carlos and Charlie's, and Prince is there and he's sitting down and he's by himself. And I go over to him and I sit down next to him. And I said, Prince, man, I says, what's the deal with you and Morris, man? You know, why are you guys, you know, even fighting, man? I said, Morris loves you like a brother, man. What do you know? And he says, well, man, you know, he says, his mother says I'm a devil and blah, 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 this and blah, 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 that. And I go, are you a devil, man? He goes like, no. I said, then what are you worried about, man? What are you thinking about, man? You know, I said, Morris loves you like a brother. You know that we all came up together, man. What, you know? And he didn't, you know, he didn't say nothing. So I got up. I went to Morris. He says, well, how did it go? And I said, man, let's just go. Let's just get out of here. You know, so, and we left, you know, and, you know, that was it, you know, that was it, you know.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon or consider donating at funkandstuff.net. Thank you very much.